Welcome everyone, this is Kerjims channel. Now we are to the next episode of Similarity Champions and Comparison, presented by WildRift League of Legend versus the Mobile Legend Bang Bang. But before that, please like and subscribe to my channel and don't forget to click the bell running up so you'll be notified for the next episode video.
Nocturne, on the other hand, had his story fleshed out. The last time we have read about Nocturne was actually 2 years ago, during the first Demacian update. During the story called For Demacia, there was a shadowy demon who haunted Phosphorus. Later it was revealed that this demon had some connections to Lux's uncle and his grave. But that's pretty much all we knew about Nocturne. There were no connections to ninjas, magic, or even shadows really. He was just a dark demon. But now, everything is different. While the old story is still canon, we now know what exactly Nocturne is. And with it, we know the answer to the theory I used to hate so much. Now, when we are covering the story of a champion, we go through the bio first. And then we go through the short story that expands the champion even more. But I realized that since Nocturne is all about tricks and mysteries, his short story is much cooler if you don't actually know what Nocturne is. So this time we will start with the short story, and after that we will go into Nocturne's bio that will explain what is happening with him. So without further ado, let's have a look at the short story, The Shadow Door. The story takes place in Piltover. It begins with a father called Kelvin talking to his very young son, Abel. Kelvin already told Abel 2 stories before his bedtime, but the boy wanted to hear another one before he went to sleep. It was already too late for the boy to stay up, and Kelvin could tell. The boy was afraid that the monsters might get him when he falls asleep. Kelvin smiled at him, but deep inside he regretted reading his son the last story. While Kelvin remembered his own father reading it to him as well, he definitely wasn't as young as Abel was now. The story was called The Shadow Door, and it was Kelvin's favorite as a child. It was about a young squire who won a battle against a foul king who sought to cloak the world in shadow. Kelvin remembered how much the story scared him, and he realized he probably should have waited before reading it to Abel. Then Kelvin assured Abel that it was just a story, and he told him that even if he had a bad dream, the monsters from the story could never hurt him, that all of it was not real. He then leaned down to kiss Abel's forehead, but the boy shrank back from him. Kelvin chuckled. He asked the boy if he's too old for a kiss, but the chuckle died quickly as Abel kept sinking into the bed. A chill ran up Kelvin's spine as his son sank lower and lower, as if a pit opened up beneath the bed. Abel cried out as the blankets tightened around his body. It began to blister, becoming slick and wet as it morphed into a red spotted tongue. Finally, Kelvin snapped free from the shock. He reached out for his son, struggling to get hold of Abel and pull him out. But the tongue tightened even more, sliding deeper down. The edges of the bed splintered with a sharp crack, turning sharp and yellow as they morphed into fangs. The entire frame was transforming into a gigantic hideous maw, ready to devour Kelvin's son whole. Kelvin cried out in horror, and suddenly coils of dark mist feathered from his nose and lips, rising to swirl above the changing bed like a gathering storm. The maw flexed, yawning wide as it released a deafening squeal. It was neither the roar of a great predator, nor the howl of a beast gathering its skin for the hunt. It sounded to Kelvin like a birthing cry, almost as if it were in agony. Abel screamed after his father before vanishing from sight. The jaws snapped shut. In the next moment, Kelvin shot up from his bed. His face was covered in cold sweat, and he struggled to catch his breath. He looked around, but his room was too dark to see anything but the silhouettes of his furniture. It took him a while to calm down. He couldn't remember the last time he had a nightmare, let alone a nightmare as vivid and real as this one. He wanted to at least check on his son to see if he's alright. But before he was able to get out of his bed, he heard Abel's voice in front of him. The room was still too dark to see anything, but he saw a small shadow standing in front of his bed. At first, Kelvin was confused. He wanted to know what was Abel doing out of his bed, but before he could finish his question, the boy interrupted him. "Why did you have that dream?" Abel asked. The question didn't help Kelvin's confusion. "Why did you do it?" Abel continued. "Don't you know that's what feeds him?" Kelvin suddenly felt very cold. He looked up over Abel's head and saw a tall shadow covering the wall. A shadow that was not of his son. Suddenly, Abel's silhouette melted into the shadow on the wall. Just like it happened in his dream, thin tendrils of dark mist poured from Abel's lips. And a moment later, the image of the boy was gone, but his shadow remained. With a wet, burbling hiss, the shadow began to tear itself loose from the wall. Sheer terror seized Kelvin as he watched the creature emerge. It was like a living shadow, roughly human in form, its body tapering down beneath the torso like the tip of a blade. The monster rippled and waved, as if Kelvin was watching it beneath dark waters. A pair of cold eyes was now staring through his very soul. Kelvin tried to move. With every fiber of his body, he fought against the darkness. But no matter how his body demanded it, his mind betrayed him. He was paralyzed, incapable of being anything more than a witness to something he had believed only existed in all fables read by fathers to their sons. A monster, one that was real. The creature's jaw parted a fraction, revealing long, crooked teeth. Then, it spoke to him, somehow repeating Kelvin's panicked thoughts back to him with his own voice. "What are you?" it rasped. "Where did you come from?" It surged closer, hovering over him. Drops of midnight fell from its form, bleeding away to nothing like ink in the ocean. The monster's arms elongated, their ends twisting and flattening into broad, wicked blades that hooked over its claws. Kelvin blanched, unable to look away from the nightmare creature as it bent down, bringing its horrific vision directly level with his. It whispered a single word to Kelvin before it buried its blade in his heart. It whispered the answer to his questions, spoken softly with the voice of a drowning man sinking into the darkest depths. "You." The next morning brought back the noise of the thriving merchant city. Sunlight bathed the metropolis, shining from every window, including that of Kelvin's bedroom. Abel ran to Kelvin's room, ready to wake up his father and start another day. But when the boy opened the door, there was something strange happening. The shadow slid back from the morning light, but somehow slower, more reluctantly than usual. Abel looked around, but he could find no one. There was no sign of his father, or anyone else in the room. And yet, the boy could not shake the idea that something, crowded into the darkest corner of the room, was watching him. Abel coughed, not noticing the tiny wisp of mist that followed, before turning back toward the hall and closing the door behind him. Now, at this point you may be thinking, that's a pretty common paranormal horror story, and there are no ninjas in it. How can it be connected to Zed? Well, Nocturne's bio is much more descriptive. So, let's have a look at the bio now. Most of the magic found on Runeterra can be dangerous and unpredictable. There are some forms and disciplines that even the most skilled mages and sorcerers will shun, and with a good reason. For centuries, the practice of shadow magic was all but forbidden across Runeterra, for fear of reawakening the horrors it once unleashed upon the world. The greatest of these horrors has a name, and its name is Nocturne. Towards the end of the Rune Wars, desperate for victory, cabals of warrior mages sought any advantage they could find over their foes. Although no one can name the first person to surrender their flesh to enter the spirit realm, it is known that those who did came to stalk one another not only on the battlefield, but in landscapes shaped by their own conscious thoughts and emotions. Unconstrained by the laws of physical reality, they fought in ways that even the greatest minds couldn't comprehend. These people who willingly entered the spirit realm were able to conjure subtle etheric assassins to do their bidding. Shadow mages seemed particularly skilled at such things. And as it was, for a time, they came to dominate the spirit realm, casting it into twilight. The thoughts of mortals everywhere were touched by this darkness. It sapped their morale and infected their dreams with nameless fears haunting them day and night, driving some to commit even more horrendous acts against their own kin. No one can say whether all of this suffering created Nocturne from nothing, or if it merely corrupted a lesser assassin construct into something more willful and deadly. But the shadowy creature that resulted was one of insubstantial form and fathomless dread. Nocturne understood nothing of kindness, honor, or nobility. It was terror made manifest, with none of the restraint necessary to control itself. However, it is important to remember that this demonic creature only howled within the spirit realm. There it set upon these foolish errant mages who had given it life, thrashing in desperation for an end to its own suffering. It was in pain, and that pain made it cruel, but it quickly acquired a taste for mortal fear. Time has little meaning inside a spirit realm, but Nocturne dragged out each and every pursuit for as long as possible, savoring the prey's anguish before ending its life. Soon enough, there was no one left who dared to enter Nocturne's domain. It is believed that because Nocturne cut down so many shadow mages, He altered the course of the Rune Wars, and he possibly affected its outcome. But after the Rune Wars were over, what little remained of the lore of the shadow magic was hidden away. Its practice carried the sentence of death in many lands. Trapped in the spirit realm, and with precious few intruders to sustain it, Nocturne began to starve. The only thing close to the feast of fear it had once tasted was when mortal minds unknowingly drifted through the ether in the hours of sleep, drawn on currents of magic to where the two realms divide, and where peaceful dreams can easily become nightmares. Nocturne found a way to manifest itself into the waking world. Existing now as a shade, eyes burning with cold light, Nocturne has become a sinister reflection of the primal fears of the many people of Runeterra, from the bustling cities to the desolate plains, from the mightiest kings to the lowest peasants. The demon is drawn to any weakness of spirit it can twist into mortal terror and everlasting darkness. So, as you can see, we can tick off one thing. There is absolutely no way Nocturne is dead. That's simply because we know how Nocturne was born. People figured out how to enter the spirit realm and how to summon spirits inside the spirit realm, to hunt and kill other people who also enter the spirit realm. As a result, because all of this was done through dark magic, eventually someone somehow conjured Nocturne. Unfortunately, Nocturne wasn't in the mood to obey whoever created him, and he just roamed around the spirit realm and killed everyone. Now, with all of this information, it is pretty safe to say that there are connections between Zed and Nocturne. During his story, Zed discovered and learned how to use the same dark magic that ravaged the spirit realm during the Rune Wars. The story even mentioned that the shadow magic was forbidden in many regions, so it is no surprise that it ended up in Ionia as well. But that is not where the suspicious connections end. Let's have a look at the comparisons between shadow magic and shadow technique. Both arts are forbidden, both deal with shadows, both conjure dark assassins from the shadows, and both allow teleporting from place to place, likely passing through the spirit realm. There are too many similarities to believe that Zed and Nocturne have nothing in common. But the interesting thing is that Zed will have to encounter Nocturne in the future. Nocturne is still locked inside the spirit realm, and every time Zed wants to use the shadow technique, he has to also step inside the spirit realm. And since Nocturne wants to massacre anyone who enters his domain, it seems like eventually Zed will stumble upon him. And it is even more interesting when you realize that Zed is teaching his students how to use the shadow magic as well. So technically, Zed is preparing a massive feast for Nocturne, but no one has any idea that Nocturne is coming.
The mysterious race from the ancient time is quietly coming into the land of dawn again. Shadowbringer is a mysterious race from the ancient times who is a sustained DPS assassin hero and owns the ability of making enemy heroes losing their vision.
Oh my, I'm bleeding!
Meanwhile, he also has some burst damage and CC ability, but in his night duration, he has the highest movement speed among all heroes and no one can catch up with him. In general, Hercult is a sustained defense assassin with special abilities. Passive. A hero casting a skill near Hercult will be silenced. This effect has 3 seconds cooldown on one single target. When against mage or marksman heroes, this passive ability grants 1 second silent debuff, which is enough for Hercult to stop mage heroes finishing their combo so that Hercult is able to deal more damage. First skill, vanishes right away and appears at the target location, dealing physical damage to nearby enemies and silencing them. Using after Dark Night Falls will also inflict an extra slow effect on enemies. This is a perfect skill for initiating and chasing. Second skill, active. Cast poison blades in forward direction. Each blade dealing to enemies physical damage, minions and jungle monsters will only take 75% of the damage. And slowing. Slow effect stacks. Passive. Every basic attack will increase the number of blade casts up to 5 blades. The effect lasts 10 seconds. The core skill of Shadowbringer. Enemy hit by the blades will be slowed so they cannot escape from the Shadowbringer. Remember to store up 5 blades before hunting an enemy. Then casting Deadly Poison Blade, first to deal massive damage to the enemies, make him or her lose their will to fight. Third skill, Passive. Increases attack speed active. Hercult summons the Knight, making all enemy heroes lose nearby vision and all their allied vision for 3.5 seconds.